So she may be less than a year into her first term in Congress, but Dr. Kim Schrier already has a challenger for her seat.
Yeah, Army veteran Jensen, a Republican, announcing a run in the 8th Congressional District, releasing this campaign video yesterday, saying he wants to cut through the partisanship in D.C. And Jensen joining our Brandy Cruz now, live in studio. Good morning.
Bill, Liz, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Jensen, thank you for being here. You told me this is your first TV interview. We have a lot of folks new to politics.
Trying
to jump into
That's
things.
it.
I'm going to talk about your military service in a moment. I know that's a big part of your campaign and your life. But first, just tell people about your life in Bonney Lake.
Yeah, no, so again, first, thanks for having me on. I quipped before, this is a similar feeling to jumping out of an airplane, the first live TV interview. So yeah, no, Bonney Lake is fantastic. My wife is one of 9 from the Myrna clan, and they all sort of live in the broader Bonney Lake area. So we've wanted to get back and be close to family for a long time. So we're very excited to be there, to live in the Bonney Lake area, and happy to be, you know, a citizen here in the 8th Congressional District.
All right, your military service, you're an Army veteran, Army Ranger, 4 combat tours, 2 Bronze Stars. All of that service, you say, was the result of a visit to Walter Reed Medical Center in 2007. Can you explain?
Yeah, so at the time I was the executive assistant to Senator John Thune, my home state senator, and I drove the boss to Walter Reed for a visit with a young man, a soldier from Bison, South Dakota, who grew up about 23 miles away from me. He was catastrophically wounded by an IED in Iraq. And the one comment that he had to Senator Thune and I was that he wanted to be back in Iraq to be with his guys. And that just really impacted me. I'd had a series of almosts in my life, almost enlisted after 9/11, almost went to the service academies, but never did. After that interaction, I think it was about 3 months later, I was in Columbia, South Carolina in basic training in the same military installation that my grandfather deployed from to go to World War II.
Let's talk about some of the things you said in your campaign video and also your statement about your intentions to run. You talked about politicians, you know, the partisanship in D.C., which I think we all feel and acknowledge. People serving their party themselves instead of their country. Is Dr. Kim Schrier included in that? This is someone who's only been a politician for about 10 months. She was a doctor before that, very new to the political scene. Do you consider her as someone who's serving her party instead of her country?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at her voting record, I think that, you know, I'll let her voting record speak for herself. She's very much sort of aligned with the left, but
she's a Democrat.
Less about, you know, the current occupant of the seat, and more about sort of the broader rhetoric and the level and sort of the discourse that we hear in politics today. I think there's a silent majority of folks that, you know, support the accomplishments of the administration. You know, you've got tax cut, you've got criminal justice reform, you've got banning bump stocks. There's a lot of bipartisan things that have happened, but there's a lot of folks that, you know, just don't like the rhetoric, don't like some of the things that are coming through on social media from the president. And, you know, I've been to Ellensburg, I'm going to Ording, I'm, you know, all across the 8th Congressional District, and I think there's a lot of folks that don't feel that they're currently heard or represented.
There's a couple things I want to touch on there. The president. I sat down with the longtime occupant of the seat you want, former Congressman Dave Reichert, who had that seat for about 15 years.
Who's endorsed us, by the way.
Who's endorsed you. You got his official endorsement. He doesn't like the president. It was very clear from our conversations. He's not a fan of the president. Are you planning on taking a strong stance either way on the president of the United States? Because in this state, people usually want to know.
Yeah, of course, and it's the right question. And again, I would go back to saying that, you know, the Republican Party and the accomplishments of this Republican administration are legion, right? Like you look at unemployment hasn't been this low. The last time it was this low, the Beatles were cutting the Abbey Road record, right? You know, like African American unemployment is at historic lows. So again, there's a lot of accomplishments and a lot of things. And if you look at and juxtapose that against some of the rhetoric from, you know, some of the presidential candidates on the left, it smacks of socialism, right? And I think there's a real clear choice that's going to be seen in the 2020 elections, both up and down the ballot. And, you know, I really think that the ideas and the positions that we're staking out represent the majority of the 8th Congressional District.
So quickly, was that a yes or no on the president?
Oh, of course I'll stand up to the president where I disagree with him, and, you know, I'll call him to task. And, you know, I would say that, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, I disagree with on him, and I would, you know, absolutely voice that if elected.
All right, let's talk about the 8th Congressional District. I think we have a map for folks who aren't familiar, although this was a very high-profile race. I don't know if you're ready for what this race might bring. Never, ever before had the 8th been won by a Democrat.
Yeah.
Never before. And for the first time, political newcomer Dr. Kim Schrier flips the 8th. Now you're trying to flip it back. Are you worried, though, that the tides have turned in the 8th to allow for a Democrat to be elected there and that it's going to be hard to get it back? How concerning is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, any race against an incumbent is an uphill battle, right? Like, we have our eyes wide open in that regard. A few statistics that I pull out. In any midterm election, the president's party often loses seats. So that happened in 2018. You could argue that there was a lot of folks trying to send a message to President Trump. There was, I think, 3.3 million folks that turned out, which is about 1.2 million more than what would typically come out in a midterm election, and they pretty much predominantly broke Democrat. The last thing I would make is that there was about 3 seats that were really hotly contested and a lot of money was poured into towards the end of the 2018 race, and Dino Rossi was outspent, I think, 3-1. This year, there's a lot more seats the Democrats have to defend. There's a lot more enthusiasm on the right. You know, obviously the president's going to be on the ballot. You're going to have a lot more folks turning out in areas that didn't turn out for Dino in 2018. And we've got, I think, a really good shot. We know it's going to come down to about 36,000 voters, primarily in King County, and just turning out our base, which, you know, I feel absolutely confident. There's a lot of excitement in sort of, you know, I've been on the campaign trail, on the campaign trail for a day, but, you know, talking to folks for a very long time in the 8th Congressional District, and I'm feeling very good about our chances.
Really quickly, we're out of time here, but I mean, why? Look, you saw what the Kim Schrier-Dino Rossi race was like. It was nasty. You talk about the partisanship in D.C., which is soul-sucking right now. Why leave behind your peaceful, nice life in Bonney Lake and decide that you want to jump into that mix?
Yeah, well, I think for the same reason that I enlisted in 2007. I feel a calling. I feel that there needs to be change, and, you know, guys like Dan Crenshaw have stepped up. I'm inspired by that. Dan Crenshaw is a former Navy SEAL in Texas, a Republican member now. I feel a calling that we need to bring positive discourse and, you know, servant leadership to take care of all of the voters, Republican or Democrat, in the 8th Congressional District.
All right, Jesse Jensen, a Republican candidate for the 8th Congressional District. We appreciate you coming in this morning, introducing yourself to our viewers and voters. We'll be speaking much more to you and Dr. Schrier about your ideas and direction for the country. A lot more over the next year or so. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. We're going to head back over to you, Liz.
Brandy, appreciate it. So it is